Alright, this video's for any future reference on setting the planter up. 1760. First off, a couple years ago we used this pin here. This thing's pretty small. Fits in there with lots of room. And this is the pin we want to use. The ones for the Brent wagon are a little bit too big, but this one's just the right size. So let's make sure that that pin is reserved for the planter only. These hydraulic lines have R and L on them. Can't really see that, but in case those rub off because of the oil, there's little green and yellow tags on them. Green is left, yellow is right. Alright, so this is a fold valve that gives pressure to the outside wheels. It should be closed all the way for transporting and during storage. When you're going to open it up, you open up, unfold the planter all the way, lower it down first, then you can open this valve all the way to that way. Then you can raise it up and it will give pressure to these outside wheels. If you're going to work on it in the shop for a little while and it's going to be unhooked from the tractor like it is now, then you should raise it up and close that valve so that it keeps the pressure to those outside tires. This is currently set up for corn. In order to switch it to beans, I'm going to put this paper clip, pull it up a touch, and it goes down. Right there. So since we're doing corn here first, I set that paper clip up. This little wire on the outside of here, in order to switch it to beans, you move it over the top. Like that. And then also in beans, you set this brush in line. Alright, this is row number 10. I couldn't get this to work very well when there was a washer that typically goes right between the spring and that roll pin. As you can see, this one here has a washer around it. I took that washer off simply because couldn't get this thing to push all the way in and out. You just couldn't set it. So as of now, that doesn't have a washer, just to be forewarned in case that causes a problem in the future. If you ever notice that insecticide is coming out much slower in one of the boxes than the others, you're going to want to check for an obstruction, and you'll find that right in here is where the obstruction would be. That's where the insecticide is going to come out. And you probably want to blow that out with some air. Our corn plates are 30 cell and our bean plates are 108 cell. The vacuum pressures for corn is going to be 18 to 20 and beans is 10 to 11. But we are not going to use this gauge. It's not going to give us the right reading. We are going to use what's on the 2020 monitor. Make sure that these two tire pressures are correct. 28 psi on the drive wheel, and on the planter tire 44 psi. Alright, so I'm pretty sure that every Zerk that's on the planter only needs to be greased at the start of the season, except for this little guy. He needs to be greased at least every single day, probably more if you're going to be doing a lot in one day. These wheels go up and down constantly, and it can wear out the bearing if there isn't some grease in here. There's 2 per row. Get those every single day. This is going to set your depth of the seed, and for corn we're probably going to go 3 and 3 from the bottom on each side. That should give us our 2 to 2.5 inch depth, which is what we shoot for after field cultivating. You would assume that a little bit of rain is going to settle any cultivated ground down to about 2 inches, which is where you want it. So 3 and 3 should get us our 2 1/4, but we'll check that out in the field later to make sure. And then for beans, it's probably going to be 4 and 4. All right, for the closing wheels, we keep it set on to the left, second, third. I don't know which way you number it from, but least tight. These things is just kind of, we would just ride along without a whole lot of weight pushing down to close the soil back together. This I would call the first setting, so I call this second setting, second tightness. If it's all the way back, I can hardly lift the thing, but happy medium right there. So Bovies will tell me that all these chains need to be lubed every single year. Somebody goes on the end and turns this hex shaft while I constantly just spray oil these chains. And it would also be on this one that I'm going to replace all the way back to the insecticide as well. However, Nate McKenna would say the opposite. He says it just attracts dirt, and yeah, you might get one more year out of the chains by oiling them, but he's not totally sold. I'm not either then, since two expert farmers tell me different things. But I have some chain lube here, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it. All right, so the guy who came out and calibrated the planter gave me this sheet yesterday. This is what each row is set at for the rate of insecticide being put on. Most of them are 14s, but a few 13s and one 15 there at the end. And if you ever need to refer to the sheet in order to make sure that these settings are correct, then it will be in the notebook, or else you can just refer back to this video. And like I said, these are the settings for 4.5 miles an hour. All right, so I'm putting the new cleaning wheel on here. We had to get a new one because the one on the right fell off. These are set for depth based on these dimples here. There's 3 of them showing, just a little bit more than 3 dimples showing. You'll notice that more of them are showing towards the center of the planter because the whole planter kind of bends just slightly. So the very outside one, I can see half of the 3rd dimple, and this is the next one in, a little bit more showing. And then towards the center, there's as much as 4 dimples showing. And we may have to change those once we get out there. I did a quick shake of one of these cleaning wheels. Notice that it moves around a lot. Probably how we lost that one last year and why I'm replacing one now. See that this one here doesn't move. I can move the whole thing because this part down here will shake inside this thing just a little bit, but the wheels should not move back and forth on there, so that'll have to be tightened up. Make sure we check those. All right, these get greased annually. I did find a few more of them that were loose, and in order to tighten them up, you gotta take a 15/16 wrench and get it from underneath. You don't actually have to take off this entire thing in order to tip it over and then tighten the bolt that's back behind here. You just have to get underneath it with a 15/16. So in order to grease each one of these, you gotta take the Allen screw stopper there out with the Allen wrench and put in this Zerk. The new wheel that I just put on was just a Zerk all by itself, so that's the one you can take out and then put in each one of them to put the grease in. And when we grease these, we're looking for the grease to come out the back right down there. I'm probably going to want to have a rag in order to wipe that thing off each time, since you have to replace it 24 times before you can finish this little project. When you put the GPS on here, the Starfire, you're going to have this extra cord that goes from here to here. I found it in the white boxes in the back of the shop. This cord is not needed for the 8235, but for this tractor it is. And then I'll get some electrical tape and I will connect it up there somehow so that it's out of the way. Otherwise it hangs halfway down the windshield. Okay, so the cords that plug into the planter are stored behind the seat. They don't unplug from up in the cab, so they just get stored behind the seat. And got those, you can see that there's a little one connects into here. And then this connection is made right here. And then you just gotta get them secured with some electrical tape. I had to put some around here and some around here. Alright, so mounting this all together. Got the bracket that goes down with the part that comes out on the bottom. I put the seed sense monitor on first, and then put this one into the same bracket that the seed sense monitor is held on to. Then you don't have to plug seed sense in, you just got to flip the power button on back. There's nothing to plug in, it just stays here in the tractor. And then the only connection you got to make with GPS is this one here. And there's 3 other cords hanging off, and they apply to something else. Alright, so one thing you have to test at the beginning of the year is lower the planter all the way down, drag it about 2 feet, and it'll create these lines on the pavement. You need to make sure that those lines are going directly between the closing wheels. Alright, so we're going to turn the vacuum on right now on our 3rd hydraulic lever. Bump it ahead 1 notch. This turns the vacuum on. You can see that up to 6 pounds right now. We're going to need to increase it a lot. And to do that, turn this number 3 hydraulic unit right here. You can hear it increase. And then, to turn it off, never just pull that straight back. Always let it go into the float position. And as I hit that lever into the float position, I watch my vacuum pressure drop. Once I reach 0, then I can pull the lever all the way back. In order to make the arms operable, turn this valve all the way around counterclockwise. And then when you lower it down, it hits the ground, the one arm will go out, raises up, then the next arm goes out the next time, and they just take turns. One thing you're going to want to make sure of is that you're not tuned into any country radio, because good country music died about 2007. So you can find something like a good rock station and you're good. In order to change from high range to low range, I got to switch this gear around to the other side and put this pin back in. Alright, at the end of the day, make sure you remove this cap on both sides of the planter. It allows the dirt to get sucked out of there. You gotta do that while the vacuum is still running. And the reason that we put that hydraulic lever into the float position before turning it all the way off is to protect the seal around the vacuum here. If you just shut it off immediately, then it could damage that seal. I'm gonna start like about 5 feet behind the corner of where I plan on starting. Reason for that is to give the vacuum a chance. We don't want that arm out. Give the vacuum a chance to get the seeds in the cells before they actually start putting the seeds in the ground. You can't really see it at all with the way that the screen's working, but on here I put in West Endro. It doesn't save from the year before, at least I haven't figured out how to find last year's information. And then once I find the corner that I want to start at, since I got the West Endros going along Shares here, and this is the direction that I want to go back and forth the whole way across the field, I'm going to go ahead and set A, because this is the corner that I'm at. Once I get all the way to the end, I can set B. And now I know it's I want a straight line from this point all the way back to where I started. So then I can hit the set B. Alright, so I had to hit the steering wheel button, and that's what made it 3/4. And then I hit this, and that's what made it a full circle. That's when it's actually steering. 2. And running about 1500 RPM now, so I get all that